They found a perfect circle of glass in the middle of the Nevada desert. The government logged it, assessed it, and removed it from every map. Then someone wrote 4 words in the margin: "Do not pursue." There is a specific kind of government document that is more disturbing than a classified file. A classified file tells you something was hidden on purpose. But an internal assessment that was never classified, just quietly removed, tells you something different. It tells you the people who found it assumed nobody would ever go looking. In 1978, a 4-person USGS land survey team was conducting routine geological mapping in a remote stretch of southern Nevada, approximately 60 miles from any established settlement. They were cataloging rock formations, soil composition, and elevation data, the kind of work that fills federal filing cabinets and gets reviewed by almost nobody. On the 3rd day of the survey, one of the team members walked over a low ridge and stopped. What he described in his field notes was a circle. A perfect, geometrically precise circle of ground, 40 meters in diameter, where the surface soil had been fused into a smooth glass-like crust. Not cracked. Not scorched in any irregular way. Fused. Uniformly. In a perfect circle. And in the center of that circle, every compass the team carried, for compasses total, spun continuously and refused to settle. They documented it, collected samples, photographed it from multiple angles, and filed their report. The report was logged by the USGS. And then, 18 months later, the site was absent from every published survey map of the region. Not marked as restricted. Not flagged as sensitive. Just gone. As if the survey team had never stood there. As if the circle had never existed at all. Keep that detail in mind, because the man who noticed the removal spent the next 18 years of his career trying to understand why. And what he eventually found was worse than anything he had expected. His name was David Okafor. He was 31 years old in 1978 when he joined the survey team as a junior geologist. Born in Lagos, Nigeria, raised in Ohio from the age of 9, he had taken a degree in geology from Ohio State and joined the USGS through a competitive federal hiring program in 1975. He was not on the survey team the day the circle was found. He was the team's lab analyst, responsible for processing and cataloging the samples and photographic evidence after the team returned from the field. Which means he was the person who held the samples. He was the person who examined the glass-fused soil under laboratory conditions. And he was the first person to formally document what the samples showed. The glass crust, technically called fulgurite-adjacent silicate fusion, was consistent, under laboratory analysis, with extremely high temperature exposure. Not gradual. Not radiative. Instantaneous. The kind of heat event that leaves a specific crystalline signature in the silicate structure. Okafor calculated the minimum temperature required to produce the observed fusion in the soil composition of that specific Nevada site. His calculation, which he included in the formal lab report appended to the survey team's field documentation, placed the minimum required temperature at approximately 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. For context, the surface temperature of a lightning strike, one of the few natural events capable of fusing soil into glass, reaches approximately 30,000 degrees Fahrenheit, but only for a fraction of a second, and it produces a very specific irregular shape called a fulgurite, a hollow tube, branching and chaotic. Not a circle. Not a perfect circle, 40 meters in diameter, fused uniformly to the same depth across the entire surface. Okafor noted the discrepancy explicitly in his report. He wrote that the morphology of the site was inconsistent with any known natural fusion event, lightning, volcanic, or impact-based, and recommended further specialist analysis. The report was received and logged. No further analysis was requested. Okafor assumed this was bureaucratic lag. He had submitted similar escalation flags before and waited months for institutional response. So he waited. And then, in 1980, when the regional survey maps were published and he went looking for the site notation, it was gone. He checked the log. The original report was still there. Filed, dated, reference numbered. But the site itself had been removed from the published cartography. Quietly. With no explanation attached. And no one in his department seemed to think this was unusual. That was the moment, Okafor would later say, that the case stopped being a geological mystery and became something else entirely. Over the next 4 years, David Okafor attempted to pursue the question through every legitimate channel available to him. He filed 3 formal requests for clarification on the map removal through his department's administrative review process. All 3 were acknowledged. None were answered. He submitted a request to access the original survey file to verify that his appended lab report was still part of the record. He was told the file was under administrative review and temporarily unavailable. That status did not change for 11 months. When he finally gained access, the file was intact. His lab report was still there. His temperature calculation, his morphology discrepancy notation, his escalation recommendation, all present. But there was something new in the file. A single page he did not recognize. An internal assessment cover sheet, dated 3 months after his original report, bearing no author name, just a department routing code he had never seen before. The assessment itself was not attached. Only the cover sheet. And on the cover sheet, in the summary field where the findings would normally be described, there were 2 lines of text. The first line read, "Preliminary Field Analysis Review Completed." The second line read, "Origin consistent with known. Do not pursue." 4 words that answered nothing and closed everything. Okafor made a copy of that cover sheet. He was not supposed to. Personal copies of internal assessment materials were technically against USGS administrative protocol for active files. He made one anyway. He took it home. He put it in a folder. He put the folder inside the lining of his field jacket, a canvas jacket he had owned since graduate school, with a sewn inner pocket he sometimes used for small valuables in the field. He told no one. And for the next 14 years, that cover sheet stayed in the jacket lining. Not because Okafor gave up. Because he understood, by that point, that the institutional path was closed. And he was quietly, methodically, waiting for the right moment to open a different one. In 1986, something happened that should have helped Okafor, and instead made his position considerably more precarious. A geologist at a different federal institution, working independently, published a paper in a mid-tier academic journal on anomalous silicate fusion events in American desert regions. The paper did not mention the Nevada site specifically. But it described a pattern, 3 documented instances of geometrically regular, high-temperature surface fusion events in isolated desert locations between 1960 and 1980, each of which had been briefly logged by federal survey teams and then quietly removed from published cartographic records. 3 instances. Not one. Okafor read the paper the week it was published. He contacted the author, a geologist named Margaret Stein at a university in New Mexico. They spoke on the phone once. She confirmed that she was aware of additional cases beyond the 3 she had published, but that she had been advised by her university's legal department not to include them without further documentation. She asked if he had documentation. He said he did. They agreed to speak again the following week. The following week, he called her office. The number had been disconnected. He tried her university extension. He was told Dr. Stein was on an extended leave of absence. He wrote twice. No response. He never heard from her again. Her 1986 paper, which had been listed in the journal's index, was not present in the bound annual volume when Okafor checked it 2 years later at a university library. When he asked the librarian to pull the journal issue for that specific month, the issue existed. The paper's table of contents listing existed. But the pages on which the paper had been printed were missing. Not torn out. Not marked as removed. The page numbers simply jumped, from the end of the preceding paper to the beginning of the next one, with no physical evidence that anything had ever been between them. As if the paper had been removed before the volume was ever bound. Okafor wrote this down in a private notebook he kept separate from any work or personal diary. He labeled the notebook, Pattern. That notebook, along with the copy of the Do Not Pursue cover sheet, would stay in the lining of his field jacket for another 10 years. Between 1986 and 1994, David Okafor's career quietly deteriorated. Not dramatically. Not with any single obvious event he could point to. It happened the way these things apparently happen when an institution wants someone gone without the appearance of retaliation. He was reassigned from active field research to an archival review role in 1987. The stated reason was departmental restructuring. The practical effect was that he no longer had access to ongoing survey data or field samples. In 1989, he was passed over for a senior geologist promotion he was, by every professional metric, qualified for. The position went to a colleague with fewer publications and 2 fewer years of field experience. In 1991, his departmental budget was cut, specifically the discretionary research funds that allowed him to pursue analytical questions outside his assigned projects. In 1993, his archival review role was eliminated as part of a cost reduction exercise. He was offered a transfer to a data management position in a different department. He accepted. He was 50 years old. He had a mortgage. He had a daughter in college. And he had the field jacket. By 1994, he had been effectively removed from any position where his geological expertise was relevant or his access to survey records was meaningful. He was not fired. He was, as he described it in a letter he wrote but never sent, which was found among his papers after his death, carefully moved to a place where his knowledge couldn't reach anything important anymore. In 1995, he requested early retirement. It was approved immediately. There was no counteroffer. No appeal to stay. His retirement date was set for June 3, 1996. On May 18, 1996, 16 days before he was due to leave, he mailed a package to the geology department at a university in Columbus, Ohio. He addressed it to the department chair. He included a cover letter. A note asking that the contents be preserved and reviewed by a faculty member with expertise in silicate geochemistry. He included the photographs from the 1978 survey. The original soil sample documentation. His full laboratory analysis report, including the temperature calculation. He included the pattern notebook. And he included the copy of the assessment cover sheet with the 4 words written in the summary field. He mailed it from a post office 3 miles from his home. He did not tell his wife. He did not send a copy to anyone else. He retired on June 3, 1996, exactly as scheduled. And then he waited again. The package arrived at the Columbus University Geology Department on May 22, 1996. It was received by the department's administrative assistant, logged as incoming mail, and placed in the department chair's inbox. The department chair at the time was a volcanologist named Dr. Patricia Holt, who had no prior knowledge of the Nevada case, no professional relationship with Okafor, and no particular reason to treat an unsolicited package from a retired federal geologist as anything other than a curiosity. She opened it. She read the cover letter. She read the lab report. She looked at the photographs. And then she read the cover sheet with the 4 words. What happened next has been described by Dr. Holt in a 2006 interview with an independent science journalism outlet, the only detailed account she has ever given of the events that followed. She said she spent 3 days reviewing the materials before she spoke to anyone. On the 4th day, she brought the package to a colleague, a geochemist who specialized in high-temperature silicate events. The geochemist reviewed the lab analysis and the photographs. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The temperature calculation is correct. I don't know what produced this." He asked if she intended to pursue it formally. She said she was considering it. He told her, quietly, to be careful about how she proceeded. She noted the choice of words, not what she might find, or who she might upset. Be careful about how she proceeded. She spent another week reviewing everything. She cross-referenced Okafor's documentation against every known natural and industrial heat event capable of producing surface fusion in desert silicate soil. Nothing matched. Not nuclear testing, the morphology was wrong and the location was outside every known testing corridor. Not industrial accident, there was no industrial infrastructure within 60 miles. Not meteor impact, the depth profile of the fusion was inconsistent with impact physics. Nothing. And then she pulled the internal USGS routing code from the assessment cover sheet, the code belonging to no named department, and cross-referenced it against every federal agency directory she could access. The routing code appeared once in a 1971 Department of Defense Internal Administrative Register, listed beside a program designation that had no further description attached. The program name was 7 words. She wrote them down. She kept that note. When the science journalism outlet asked her in 2006 to share the program name, she declined. She said only, "I know what it means. And I decided a long time ago that knowing was enough." David Okafor died in 2004 at the age of 57, of a heart attack. He never received a response from the university. He never knew that Dr. Holt had found the routing code, or what she found attached to it. The package he mailed in 1996 is currently held in the Special Collections Archive of the Columbus University Geology Department, catalogued under a reference number that is publicly accessible but rarely searched. The materials are there for anyone who wants to look. The 4 words are still there. Origin consistent with known. Do not pursue. And the question that those 4 words have never answered, consistent with what known, remains, as of today, officially unaddressed. A perfect circle of glass in the Nevada desert. A temperature that exceeds anything nature is known to produce in that form. An institutional suppression order with 4 words and no explanation. A routing code connecting to a program name that one person found and decided, permanently, never to share. And a field jacket in a closet somewhere that held all of it for 18 years because one geologist refused to let it disappear. If you have a theory about what leaves a perfect circle of fused glass in the middle of a desert at 3,000 degrees, the comments are open. More cases like this one are coming. If this is the kind of truth you came looking for, you're in the right place.